It's time for Friday Coffee with your mortgage man, Eric. So today, we're going to talk about new build homes. Controversial topic for realtors and lenders. And how is it controversial for a buyer? The pros and the cons about purchasing a new home build, and how that segues into potential dual representation. So, when you buy a new build home, what are the reasons why home buyers would do so, right? I think one is a huge emotional tie to it. I mean, buying a home already is an emotional thing. But I think, the new car smell, if you will, I think that some people feed into that. Nobody's lived in my house before, the whole new car smell, right? Or lack of inventory. Especially here in the Phoenix market, we have some inventory issues, and people can't find anything that they fall in love with in a certain price range. And boom, they see a new build subdivision, and in they go, right? And next thing you know, they're hooked on to the new build home. So, the controversial topic about buying a new build home is the coercion, how they force you to use their in-house preferred lender. And the scuttlebutt is, that's a RESPA violation. And I'm going to disseminate the differences here for you on this. That itself, while it is morally and ethically wrong to force someone to use their in-house lender or you're not going to get your closing costs paid for, it is obvious a moral and ethical violation, which the builders could give a rip about. Look, they just don't. To coerce, right, a consumer and give them the lack of choice of lender they want. And they'll tell you, oh, you can use whatever lender you want. We're just not going to give you $5,000 towards your closing costs. So that's unfair. Now, how do the builders get away with this? Here you go. Realtors, other lenders, here's how they get away with it. Legally, anyhow. The builders own the homes. So when you own a home, yourself, let's say you own a home and you want to go sell it, you can say, you have to get your financing through Eric Kinnaman at LendSmart Mortgage, or we're not going to give you $5,000 in closing costs. And you have every right to do that because you own the home. Again, is it right? Is it morally right? Is it ethically right? Right? Conversation, a different conversation for another day, I suppose. So that's how the builders get around it. Now, what we're screaming from the rooftops is for some sort of regulation to actually take place regarding this issue in Washington, D.C. Why won't anything like this take place? Is because the builders have such a huge lobbying presence in D.C., nobody's going to take on the builders. And because you need the builders for, it's a third of the economy, housing is, which it is. So it's a touchy subject. What they're doing is wrong, morally and ethically is wrong, and they're squeezing around the letter of the law to do so, and screwing the consumer in the meantime. And generally speaking, now you guys know this, the in-house preferred lender that they usually put in there, not always, but most of the time is some green newbie, all right, that's going to sit in there. It's going to make a fraction of a commission because they're being spoon-fed leads, right? I mean, you're not going to put a 20-year seasoned veteran in there for the most part, most of the time. You're going to put a newbie in there. So you get that level of service as well when it comes to that issue. Now, here's where it's an obvious RESPA violation on the back end of that. So, what's in it for the builder to do so? Why would a builder say that? Why would a builder want to do that, right? Why would a builder say, you've got to use ABC Mortgage or you're not getting your closing costs? Why would they say that? And here's the obvious. Because ABC Mortgage is giving a kickback of some capacity. Now, that's where some of it gets hard to prove because they are sneaky and they do it with MSAs and mortgage servicing agreements, which is just an agreement between a builder and a lender, or a real estate company and a lender. It says, we'll pay you an X amount of dollars for an X amount of service. And usually those two things are lopsided. We're going to rent a space from your office for $23,000 a month, right? That kind of stuff still happens in this industry. We're going to split your marketing on I-10 freeway at $73,000 a month. Things like that. Ridiculous. And that's where the RESPA violation comes in. Is illegal kickbacks. And people that know deep in the weeds of what I'm talking about know exactly what I'm talking about. And they're trying to get somebody's attention in Congress or in the Senate right now regarding this issue. It's wrong to coerce a consumer. You want to buy our home, you got to use that company over there. And there's what happens, right? Not only are they going to talk to somebody that's relatively new in the industry and get poor service, but they're usually getting a jacked up rate because they got to inflate the interest rate to pay the builder whatever they promised to pay the builder. Extra marketing dollars, rental space in their office, an MSA agreement, those type of things. So that is, there's where the RESPA violation comes in. Now, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, have busted a few builders and lenders on this a few years back, but nothing since then. So it's just like been swept under the rug. And this goes to the exact same thing I said last week on Coffee Friday with your mortgage man, Eric Kinnaman, is that it doesn't matter who's in office, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't matter if Congress or Senate is filled with most Republicans or Democrats, because it's the lobbyists that run D.C. And they will make sure that the appropriate pockets are padded. Just is what it is, unfortunately. And who suffers? It's the consumer. So now, let's get into a different part of that. Why shouldn't you buy a new build home? Here's a couple tips. When you go into contract with that new build home, you have a 5-day inspection period instead of a 10-day. When you buy a resale, you have a 10-day inspection period. In a new build home, you have 5 days. So what does that mean? 5 days, when your 5 days are up, you aren't getting squat back. I don't care. With a resale, a normal purchase contract, if the loan was to go sideways, if it didn't appraise, if this happened or if that happened, if this happened, right, you could get your earnest deposit back within reason. New build home, I don't care what happens. Look, I don't care. I don't care what happens. You get relocated, your spouse passes, you're not getting your earnest deposit back. It is what it is. You better be ready to play with the big boys, the sneaky boys. They are sly, my friends. They are very sly. So, they have their own contract, a lot of hidden print, fine print, longer contracts. And when you do business with the builder, a couple things you need to understand is that when you close on the home, your backyard comes with a dirt. There is no landscaping package. It comes in the backyard, right? You have to, within 6 months, provide a backyard landscape to your dirt pit that took place, right? Because they're not doing anything to the backyard. Additionally, you're paying for everything that's inflated, right? So it's like a new car. When you've heard the terminology, you drive the car off the lot, it's worth $5,000 less in a second, right? It's the same concept with a new build home. Is it the wisest financial investment vehicle to real estate? No. Now look, I still understand why people do it. It's emotional tie, they like the new home smell, and I can't fault people for that completely. There's a lack of inventory. You can't fault people for that either. I'm just putting out some of the statistics and the facts that you need to know. Additionally, you will be paying for the builder's title fees So think about this. You're paying for your portion of the title fees, but you're also going to pay for the builder's portion, the seller's portion, the builder's portion of the title fees as well. So your closing costs are going to be increased $2,000 to $3,000 to purchase that new build home. And then they get you the design center. Oh, you want granite countertops? That's $87.50. You're like, really? You could put them in for yourself for half that cost. So you can see how that on day one you take ownership, you're going to be flipped upside down in value of the home. You're no longer a new build home. You would now be a resale. And it takes a while for the equity around you to build up so that you can finally break even. So you're paying more for the property than what it's really worth, basically is what we're getting at. Keep that in mind. Now, here's another thing. When you go to look at these new build homes, you better not go in there without your realtor. And here's why. They're going to nab you on dual agency, dual representation. Oh, we're just going our way home from church and we just decided to stop in at the sales office. Boom, they got you. Well, what's wrong with that, you may ask? Well, here's what's wrong with that, is that that listing agent, seller's agent, is going to represent you now. They have a fiduciary responsibility to represent the seller in first position. You come second. Sometimes that may not be that big of a deal, but sometimes it may. They work for the seller. They don't work for you. You're not saving them. You're saving yourself any money. You're saving them money and creating more of a headache and less representation for yourself. Would you go into court representing yourself? Would you go into court allowing the prosecutor to represent you? Right? And you're the defendant. And you're going to hire the prosecutor to also represent you. See the concept? Another thing. That is called dual representation, where one real estate agent represents both the selling side and the buying side. Do you know that in certain states in this country that dual representation, dual agency is illegal? Not in all states, but some. If that tells you anything how certain states view that subject, you should start to get an understanding of the atmosphere, okay? So just putting this out there is a little bit of information about the shadiness of buying a new build home. So if you want to buy a new build home, you just got to be prepared. It's a different game. That's all I'm saying. And if you are prepared, great. But if you're not, it could come to a surprise for you that you're going to be kind of locked in, forced to use their lender, not getting your earnest deposit back. You better read the fine print. You got to put in a landscape in the backyard after it closes. You're going to be paying for their title fees at the closing table. So you just have to take all this into perspective. Sorry it's a lengthy message today, but I hope I've educated you all enough on buying a new build home and the controversy that happens with it. Buyers should not be forced to use a certain lender and hold the carrot out in front of them of closing cost, or I'm not going to pay your closing cost. It's wrong. We're treating those buyers wrong. Whether it's barely legal or not, it's unethical and it's immoral practices. That said, Coffee Friday with your mortgage man, Eric.